All right, hello and welcome to today's verdict, the interactive show that gives you your legal rights and options. I'm your host and trial attorney, David Lesh. Well, today's verdict is always encouraging you to stay connected. Make sure to tweet me at David Lesh and hashtag Ask Today's Verdict if you have a question. And check us out at bronxnet.tv. No fault, also known as personal injury protection, is not well known, and that is why we have an expert on set to let you know your rights if you've been involved in an automobile accident. William Cooper is here. William, good to see you. I know you as Billy, but we'll leave it as William for now. Thanks for being here.
Thank you, David. It's a pleasure to be here.
A lot of people don't know about no fault. They don't really understand the rights and options. But before we talk, let's talk a little bit about you. We've known each other for a very long time, college at least, but the viewers don't really know you. I'm not quite sure. Who are you?
Thank you. I appreciate that. Well, I am also a trial attorney. I've been doing personal injury work for about 34 years now. We represent people in the Bronx, in Westchester, and the surrounding areas. And in my practice, all that we do is represent people who unfortunately have been injured in some type of accident or occurrence. I grew up locally. I grew up in Westchester County in Mount Vernon. I've spent a lot of time in the Bronx and all of the boroughs. So I enjoy what I do. I like representing people. I like to share information such as what we're talking about today. So it's really a pleasure to be here. Thank you.
It's our pleasure. All right, so let's get right into it. Because a lot of people don't understand what no fault means. No matter whose fault it is, somebody's going to pay bills, correct? Maybe you can explain it a little bit.
Sure, thank you. So we get calls, as I know you do, all the time from people in New York who have been involved in some type of automobile collision, an accident. And when they call up, inevitably they say to us, who do I go to? Who's going to pay our bills? I was told that the other car's insurance will pay. If I'm in a bus, I was told maybe I can't be covered at all. I don't know what to do. So it's very important that we have that conversation with them and talk to them about the no-fault insurance law. And the first thing that we always share is that what no fault essentially means is no matter whose fault the collision was, that's where they get the term, no matter whose fault the collision was, the insurance company of the vehicle you were in, usually your own insurance, pays for your medical bills dollar for dollar. That's the law. And when they hear that, their temperature comes down, they realize they can get the care and treatment they need, and then we can actually have a productive conversation.
And by the way, it doesn't even matter whether you're in the vehicle or not. I mean, you could be on a bicycle and be hit by this particular vehicle, am I correct? And you could also look to that vehicle for the insurance.
Very much so. So we always say if you're a passenger in a vehicle, if you're a pedestrian, if you're someone who's just walking around, if you're on a bicycle, or if you're a driver, all of those people are covered under the no-fault law. There's very few people in New York who are not covered. Some of them who are not include people on motorcycles. There's a carve-out for that, so that does not apply to them. But interestingly, e-bikes, which are now very popular, and we see them all over the place, e-bikes usually do constitute a bicycle, so 9 times out of 10 they are covered under no fault. So that's something to be aware of as well.
It's interesting that you would have an e-bike covered, but you wouldn't have a motorcycle covered, and they're both fairly dangerous, which is why we don't extend no fault to motorcycles, and we'll talk about serious injury in a second. Let's get back into the application itself, right? You're going to apply for no fault benefits. You have a certain amount of time to do this?
So you have 30 days from the time of the collision to submit a no fault application. That's a really short amount of time. It used to be 90 days, which was tight. They changed it a few years ago, so now every single person, again, driver, passenger, pedestrian, bicyclist, you only have 30 days from the time of the occurrence, from the time of the accident, to submit your no-fault application. If you're not timely, technically the insurance company can turn you down.
So what do you do if you're one of those people who gets involved in an accident and you're on the bicycle? You don't know, I mean, you finally get the police report, you're not really sure who the insurance company is, you got to get this done in 30 days. How do you speed the process up? How do you make sure that you take care of yourself and you don't get past the 30 days?
So the first thing we do is we encourage people, if you are involved in an accident and you are, as you said, you're searching around, you're trying to get the police report, reach out to an attorney, reach out to someone who has the experience, because at least when they contact your office, I know, or they contact our office, we'll make sure that we get in touch with whomever the insurance company is, that we help them to find out so that everything is done timely. We have also found, interestingly, in our practice that one of the only times that insurance companies are a little bit flexible, they're not usually, but they're a little bit flexible with the no-fault application if it's past the 30 days, if the individual had no knowledge as to who the insurance carrier is, we've had some success with that. But otherwise, you're right, it's really important.
Let's talk a little bit about the times when there was actually no insurance, which unfortunately happens, and I'm sure you have to speak to your clients and give them the bad news. Is there any way they can make a claim against their own insurance company, let's say, if there's no insurance, or their car is sitting in the garage, or is there another company maybe that they could sue or bring an action against if there's no insurance?
Sure. So let's look at it sort of as a two-prong scenario. So if you're in a situation and you're in a vehicle, so let's say for whatever reason you're picked up by a friend and you're driving somewhere, and your car that you're in, your friend does not have any insurance, so there's no coverage for no fault. In the state of New York, in order to protect everybody, the state has set up something called the Motor Vehicle Accident Indemnification Corporation. We refer to it as MVAC. And what MVAC is designed to do is to make sure that everybody is protected, so that if for some reason there is no insurance, you can apply to MVAC, which is through the state of New York, and they actually step into the shoes of the insurance company to make sure that you have all of the same benefits that you would have from a private insurance company, which means your bills will be paid, you can go to different doctors, and you are protected.
And just so the viewers can know, what is that amount of money that you could recover from MVAC?
So MVAC has the equivalent of what would be the minimum amount of coverage that is required in the state of New York. So you have the same benefits for no fault or PIP, personal injury protection. In other words, they will pay up to $50,000 for your medical bills. But in terms of compensation for your injuries, which is a different category, $25,000 is the maximum that you can get through.
And I find, we've talked about this off camera, that it's not very easy to get MVAC to pay their full $25,000 because they're not hit with what's called bad faith. In other words, negotiating in bad faith. So they'll make you try the case, put a doctor on, spend the money just to try and get that $25,000, but you really don't have a choice.
Agree. The insurance companies in general are challenging, to say the least. I always tell clients that all of these wonderful commercials that we see, and it seems like 9 out of every 10 commercials are for Liberty or State Farm or Geico. The reason is because they are multi-billion-dollar companies. So even though they've made a lot of money, they're not often willing to pay it out. But MVAC, because it is through the state of New York, is even tighter with their money. So it can be that much more difficult.
All right, let's talk about some of the qualifications to be able to bring a lawsuit, even though you're in an automobile accident, let's say, whether you're driver, passenger, or pedestrian, let's say, hit. Just because you're injured and you're hurt doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to be able to recover. Am I correct?
100%. So one of the most common misconceptions, as I'm sure you hear all the time, is people will call you up and they'll say they were involved in an automobile collision or some type of accident and they could have been hurt, or they have neck or back pain, but it's really difficult to run to the doctor, so I'm not going to do that. Can I still get money? Because trust me, I was hurt. And the answer in New York State is no. We have what is called a threshold, a certain level of serious injury which everybody has to have under the no-fault law in order to qualify, in order to be allowed to get money for their injuries. So if you don't have what's called a serious injury, even if you did nothing wrong.
It doesn't matter who's at fault.
Regardless of
You
fault.
hit in the rear, were sitting in traffic, did nothing wrong, you got hit. If you don't have that serious injury.
If you don't have the serious injury, you're not entitled to anything. So the logical question that is the follow-up is, okay, Mr. Cooper, okay, Mr. Lesh, what does that mean? What is a serious injury? And the state of New York gives us certain categories, and we have to fit into at least one of those categories to qualify. Some of them are very obvious, if there's death or dismemberment or disfigurement, things like that. But then you have some more subtle categories which include a fractured or broken bone of some type, if you have some sort of permanent scarring, if the individual's out of work for 90 of the first 180 days following the collision, things like that. So it can get a little bit tricky in terms of who does and doesn't qualify.
Now, how do you prove that you're seriously injured at trial?
So the thing that I always share with clients as well is respectfully, no one cares what you say as the injured client, and no one cares what I say as the attorney. What they care about is what the medical professionals say. So if you go and get the proper care and treatment, and if the test results show what is wrong with you, at that point then we as the attorneys can present that as evidence and say, listen, Mr. Smith or Miss Jones, don't take their word for it. don't take our word for it. Here's what the test results show. Here's what the doctors have to say. And then we can prove that threshold or serious injury has been met.
Do you have a fair amount of automobile accident cases in your office? I know automobiles are safer now with airbags and braking mechanisms and different things, but are you still seeing automobile accident cases?
Quite a few. So the first 15 years or so of our practice, I would say that 90% of our contacts were based on some sort of automobile or vehicle collision. Over the past 20 years, now it's probably about 60%, so it's still a good portion of it. And we are dealing with this on a daily basis. And people truly have no knowledge or understanding as to whether they can or cannot be compensated.
And an automobile is a weapon. I mean, that's the first thing you learn when you get your license and you're younger. It's a weapon. You can really get injured. Anything you're working on now that you find interesting? That you any types of areas of the law?
Yeah. So there's a couple of things that we like to focus on and that we share with people who are always contacting us. One of them is the area of construction law. In other words, people who are on construction sites or on job sites. We find that very frequently, and many people can relate to this because they either have friends or relatives or people they know who are working at a job site and they're not provided adequate or safe protection. And inevitably what happens? Someone's working on a ladder, someone's up on a scaffold, someone's working at a height, they weren't provided with any protective devices, and unfortunately they fall from a height. And we know the injuries can be quite significant, so we're very involved in those.
Listen, the most important question to ask you is, where do we find you? Is there a website, or is there something else? Where
Sure,
we can grab you?
So I appreciate that. So our website is at Cooper, C-O-O-P-E-R, dash, or hyphen law, L-A-W.com, cooper-law.com. So that is where our website is. Our phone number to be contacted either in the Bronx or in Westchester is 914-428-9200. But a lot of people reach us any way possible. So it's through friends, through relations. It's our pleasure to help people.
Well, it's been our pleasure having you here, and hopefully you're going to come back maybe in a couple of months and let us know how the no-fault law is shaping up.
Be my pleasure. Thank you for having me.
All right, well, thank you, William. We have to take a quick break, but we'll be back right after this.